Hello everybody, how are we all? Okay, so this training was supposed to be on Wednesday, so I apologise that it is late, but last week was a little bit of a crazy week for me, so I thought I would jump on today and say hello and do it then. So hopefully you can hear me and see me okay. I'm not sure how my signal is faring up, so any issues, let me know. Hopefully it's not too bad. Let's put some brightness. There we go. It looks quite dark down here, so that's just brightened me up slightly. It's a really grey day here, so nice little bit of brightness coming. At least it's coming through your end, even if it's not here with me in the room. So this training is this week's team training, and this is all about what happens when we assume in our Scentsy business, which I reckon most of us do a lot of the time. Whether we recognise it, whether we realise it, whether we intend to do it or we don't intend to do it, I think a lot of us assume things. So this is going to talk a little bit about what happens when we assume things in our Scentsy business, what can happen to our business when we take on that kind of behaviour. So I have notes, so if I'm looking down, it's because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, and make sure that everything that I want to get covered gets covered. So we often make really wild assumptions that we know stuff, okay, and we really need to stop doing that. Because let me just give you some facts, okay. We don't have a crystal ball, we can't time travel, okay, it'd be amazing if we could, and we definitely can't read minds. So if we don't have a crystal ball and we can't time travel and we can't read minds, how on earth are we going to stand here and say that we can make assumptions? Because we don't actually know, do we? We don't know anything. So why do we cast judgments? Why do we assume things? Why do we write things off without even knowing the facts? Why do we poo-poo things that we think actually we should have took some time to understand? Why do we poo-poo them straight away? And I tell you why. One of the reasons why is that we're human, okay? And we have this thing called ego. And you've probably heard of ego, and you've probably heard the negative connotations to ego, and maybe don't fully understand what ego actually is, because it's actually a bit of this, a bit of that, and a bit of the other, okay? And so it might sound a bit weird when I say we have an ego, and that's why we make assumptions, but actually an ego is a person's sense of self-esteem. It's a person's sense of self-importance, and it can work both ways. It can be really good to be able to recognise your ego, but it can also be, when you do recognise it, it can also be something that you pick up as a little bit detrimental to yourself. So let's explore this a little bit, and this will make sense as we go through. So let's say you've got a new customer, she joins your customer group, okay? You've done her a welcome post, she's not commented, she's not reached out, and she's not placed an order. So how will you be feeling? Well, your ego will probably be going into hyperdrive, and I bet some of these things will be what's whizzing around in your head. So she's joined the group but she's not ordered. So what's the point of her being in my group if she's not going to order? Your self-doubt ego, so the part of your ego that is directly associated to your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-confidence. So your self-doubt ego wants to feed into your self-worth. And most of us feel that our self-worth is fed by the sale part of what we do. We want that buzz, okay? We want that sense of achievement that's measured by what we get financially. So if we don't get a sale quickly from that customer, your ego wants you to firstly blame her. It's her fault. And then after you've blamed her, depending on how strong your sense of self-worth is, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of self-confidence is, most of us then internalise that and blame ourselves. So it's likely your ego will say things like this to you. Well, maybe she doesn't like me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this just isn't going to work. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. So that self-doubt ego is strong, especially if your own self-worth is quite low. This ego is the ego that tends to want to create failure, okay, which sounds really weird, but it's almost like when you feel like you're not good enough and then you fail, it's like, oh yeah, see, told you I wasn't good enough. But it's the wrong type of gratification, it's the wrong type of kind of acknowledgement. So that ego doesn't serve you. That side of your personality doesn't serve you. Now, the other type of ego that wants to feed your self-worth is your arrogant ego, okay? This is the one that feeds into your self-worth and drives you to think you are better than what you actually are, okay? Which is great at raising your self-worth, and it's great with dealing with life, but the downside of this ego that wants you to be arrogant is that sometimes you lack a little bit of empathy and you lack a little bit of understanding, and you only ever work at surface level because it's very much about you, okay? The arrogant ego is very much about you. So this is what the arrogant ego would say to you about the girl joining your customer group that hasn't placed an order. The arrogant ego would say to you, oh, she will eventually order. I will wow her with my amazing business. She won't be able to not place an order with me. The arrogant ego would say, I'm amazing. Of course she's going to order. The arrogant ego would say, I am the bee's knees. Of course she's going to order at some stage from me. The arrogant ego would say, of course this is going to work. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm amazing at this. I'm good at this. Everyone tells me I'm great at this. It's going to be fine. Okay. Now that arrogant ego is strong, especially if your self-worth is actually quite high. That ego tends to really kick in. But what tends to happen is you get a burn and bum out with that ego, because arrogance can only exist when it's being fed. Okay, so what we actually want to do with our ego is we want to find the sweet spot between the self-doubt ego and the arrogant ego that we all have. We all have parts of both, okay? And what we actually want to try to do as a human being and as a Scentsy consultant is find that sweet spot. And somewhere in the middle of the self-doubt ego and the arrogant ego is this middle sweet spot that I call an understanding ego, okay? So this is where we have enough self-awareness to be able to recognise our own weaknesses, okay? And what we need to learn in order to be able to achieve the results that we want. So we get it. We get that we're not the all-knowing yet. We get that we've got lots to learn. We get that we need to do certain things to be able to get to where we need to go. But it's also the ego. We need to understand how others feel in our community and how others operate and how others think. So this kind of like sweet spot is a little bit more about other people than ourselves, okay? So the understanding ego would say to you regarding this customer that's come into your group that hasn't placed an order, okay? This is how your understanding ego would talk to you. It would say to you, she's joined, but you've reached out to make her feel comfortable and welcome and respected. So she's joined. You haven't waited for her to prove that she loves you, that she thinks you're fantastic and connects with you. You've reached out to her to say, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you being here. I just want you to feel really, really welcome. So you understand that that she may have her egos dealing with, her issues, her personality, and actually you've taken it upon yourself, that understanding that that customer might feel a little bit awkward, that customer might feel a little bit like rabbit in the headlights, the customer might feel a little bit like, what do I do now? And you've reached out to her and welcomed her and allowed her to feel like she's part of something. And what that does, understanding that part of your ego and understanding that she has an ego and she has a personality, it actually makes you more approachable. So when she then bounces her energy back to you, when she realises you've reached out to her, she's more likely to ask you questions. She's more likely to connect with you because she feels you've taken the first step. You've understood that you've invited her into your community, okay? What it also says, having that kind of approach to the customer, is that you're actually doing all you can to nurture good relationships, and you think about your actions and how your actions are perceived by your customers. So rather than just throwing people into a customer group and thinking, well, of course the arrogant ego thinks that you're going to get orders. Of course I'm going to get orders. And then when you don't, you're disappointed. The self-doubt ego thinks, oh, well, they probably don't like me. They probably won't order. They probably won't stay. They'll probably leave. Okay? Because it's all about you. Ego is all about you. But when you become that understanding ego and you listen to the understanding ego, yes, you know, the likelihood is that they probably will order, but you need to make them feel like they're respected, they're appreciated. So you've got to have that empathy, that understanding to open the doors, if you want to call it that, to allow them and their ego to come in and cope and deal with your community. So it may say to you, you are actually good enough. This understanding ego may say to you, you are actually good enough, you know. And if you keep learning day by day, you're going to get better day by day. And the more that you learn about the business, about Scentsy, the easier your ego will be on you, because you won't be in this extreme position where you're being really arrogant and cocky and think you've got it all sussed, and then get severely disappointed. You won't have that barrage of emotions, but neither will you be in the self-doubt where you just think, what is the point of doing it? It's all going to fail. So it's finding that sweet spot of your personality. You know, when you have, you've probably heard me talking about mind monkeys, when you have mind monkeys on your shoulders, and if you're nervous about doing something, you'll have one monkey on one shoulder saying all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, and then you have another monkey on the other shoulder giving you all the reasons why you should do it, and you have that internal battle. That's a little bit how it is with an ego, but sometimes you have to recognize what ego is to be able to then listen to it and quieten the extremes down. You want to quieten the self-doubt, and you want to quieten and the arrogance, and you want to find that sweet spot of your personality, of your ego in the middle, where you are more inclusive about who's in your community, how you communicate, and what do you really think's going to happen. Not the worst case, not the best case, the realistic case. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's have a look. So let's bring this back to assuming and presuming in relation to Scentsy again. You can't assume that you know how much money people have set aside to treat themselves. Okay, what they tell you isn't necessarily the real truth. Okay, we're not going to disclose our personal financial affairs with strangers. That's not how we do things. And sometimes if we're worried that we're going to be pressured into something, we hold information back so that it eliminates an element of pressure. So you can't assume you know somebody's circumstances. They may well look comfortable financially, they might look happy, but behind closed doors they could be bored, They could be unhappy, they could be skint, they could be suffering with anxiety, they could be suffering with empty nest syndrome, they could be suffering with depression. So what you might have to offer in Scentsy might be just what they need, as long as you don't assume, okay? You can't assume if somebody would or wouldn't like to host a party. And this happens a lot. Oh, no, she's too busy, or all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. So that's your self-doubt, ego talking. So you might think people are really busy who work full-time with 3 kids, and there's no way they would want to host a party. But you might not realise, because you haven't found your sweet spot of understanding, that this could be a really welcomed escape for that person. Something for them to look forward to, and just what they need for themselves right now, okay? You can't assume that if a customer's only ever purchased a mini warmer, that they wouldn't ever go on and purchase a large warmer. Because if you only show them mini warmers, you're not opening the door to show them what else is possible, okay? You can't assume that actually you've got a whole load of cleaning fanatics as customers, and having the Scentsy cleaning range would give them the right buzz. If you never actually offer it, if you never demo it, if you never talk about it. You can't assume that your customer's only got a few friends. They might have a massive school mum network, an after school club network. They could be, they could have like teacher friends, they could have gym buddy friends, they could have a massive network of people. So it would actually be quite easy for them to have a shopping link and to share it. But if you presume they've only got a few friends because of the small amount of information you've ever been privy to, if you assume that, you'll never go on to offer them a party link or a shopping link or a basket or what have you, because you'll just presume they haven't got it. But actually you have to have the conversations, you have to do the relationship building. And I talk about this a lot, you know, you can't just post on social media and expect to get an order. This is a relationship business. This isn't a high street shop. We are small businesses, personal shopping. We are one-to-one, face-to-face, relationship building type of business. So therefore you have to do the relationship building. You have to get to know the people that you know, you're circulating with, that are your audience, that are your customer base, that is your network. You can't assume that a customer is saving like mad to pay off a car loan or pay off the next holiday, and they won't benefit from extra income. You can't assume that. So the Scentsy opportunity would be amazing for them. But if you don't get to know them and show them the possibility, the answer is always going to be no. You know, most of us are, you know, we live in our own homes, possibly, and therefore we're doing home improvements. It's pretty standard, typical. You know, you want to get the decorating done, you need to get new carpets, you need a new kitchen, you need a new table, you need a new sofa. And you know, we if you're working, you've got an income, but when things are tight, sometimes people sit there thinking, oh my God, it's going to take me a whole year of saving to get this flipping sofa, or I'm never going to get a new kitchen. And actually, if you don't have the conversations with them, how are you getting on? What are you up to the moment? I love your house. Every time I come in, it's gorgeous. You then prompt a conversation where they say, oh yeah, it is nice, but you know what? We've been waiting for a new kitchen for ages, but it's just so expensive. You know, taps are 200 quid, you know, whatever the case may be. You get into a conversation and you can say, well, I know you work full time and I know you've got kids, but have you ever thought about having a second income that you could just literally save that money in a separate pot and put it towards paying for your kitchen quicker? It's a question. They're going to go yes or they're going to go no. But if you just assume that they've got all their stuff together and they don't need any extra money, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't need extra money or want extra money, you know. You can't assume a customer won't want to borrow your borrow basket, okay? So if you think about your customer base, let's say you've got 150 people in your customer group, have every single one of them had a borrow basket? Probably not. Why not? What's stopping you having the conversation with them? What's the assumption? They're going to say no? You still got to ask. They're going to say yes, but it's going to be inconvenient. They're going to say, I'm not sure, tell me more about it. You're going to have to answer questions. It might be, oh, I'm not really using Scentsy anymore. Well, what's the point of being in the customer group then? So there might be lots of things, like objections you're going to have to overcome. And all of that is you're judging the situation before you know the answers, which is then putting you off asking the question. So you're assuming that people, if I ask her, she's going to go no, so there's no point in asking. If I ask her, she's going to say she's no longer using Scentsy, and then I've got to figure out what I do with that customer. It's all assumptions. Do you see where I'm going? You can't assume that your customer sees all your posts on social media, so how else can you reach them? You can't just rely on Facebook. You have to have that contact. You have to have those little moments when you're dropping off orders or people are collecting orders where you have that little conversation, just for 2 minutes, just for 5 minutes, or invite them in for a cup of tea if you're sociable. But those moments are precious. Those are the moments that anchor relationships. You can't just use social media. So think about, you know, when you leave somebody a message, say it's a WhatsApp or a Facebook message, how about actually voice clipping? Because a message written down is just black and white text, isn't it? It's cold, it's not emotional, there's no kindness, there's no understanding. So therefore, the ego can jump out. It could be written in a way that it could be construed as being a bit arrogant. It could be written in a way that you're a little bit like, I'm never going to make this work, I really need your order, have you got an order? It could look self-doubty. But if you actually leave a nice little voice clip for somebody, they hear the tone of your voice, you connect with them, and you build that relationship. And actually, that personal conversation jumps fences as far as assumptions, because they get to know you, like you, trust you, and they're more likely to be more honest and open with you. You can't assume that your customers are going to recommend you. So how do you influence this? You influence it by doing a really good job. You influence it by being consistent. You influence it by being visible. You influence it by making your community a really inclusive, friendly, kind space. You influence it in the way that you make an effort with your orders. And you do those little things like little voice clips, that personal touch. You can't assume your customers won't want an air purifier because it's £300. So £300 is not a lot of money, okay? £1 million is a lot of money. If you were talking business, £1 million, I'd be a little bit like, £1 million is a lot of money to invest. £300 is not a lot of money to invest. So, you know, your arrogance and your self-doubt will be kicking in on that one, because you'll be like, no one's going to want to buy that, it's too expensive. But your self-doubt will be going, well, I would never be able to sell it anyway. Okay, but if you have the understanding that actually people do have access to £300, and if you share the information well and you point out the features and the benefits and the reasons why it's great to have these products in the homes and the lifetime guarantee and how to use them, and share some reviews and some feedback, you will probably get a yes please. Okay, because you just can't assume. You don't know what other people have got to spend. You don't know what their needs are. You don't know their feelings on clean air, safe environments. You don't know, so you can't assume. You can't assume that a team member just wants to do Scentsy as a hobby. There may be a budding entrepreneur inside them, but their self-confidence might just need a bit of a boost. But if you don't talk and you don't share what's possible with people, how can you ignite that flame? Do you know what I mean? You know, when people join, you know, we're very clear. It's up to you what you want to do. I can't do anything for anybody else. I can just be here to support, to cheerlead, to train, to coach, to help. But ultimately, it's the individual and their goals, what they want out of their life, what they want to achieve, which will dictate how they run their business. But equally, the understanding ego would say, well, she's quite friendly, she's quite bubbly, she's got a really nice personality, she's got lots of people in her customer group, she's doing really good content, So what's holding her back? Perhaps it is the confidence thing. Perhaps she's never really had anybody say that actually you're good at this, that you can do this. She's never had that cheerleader who's got her back. So perhaps if you were to give that in your mentoring to that team member, she might go, do you know what? Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be a little bit braver. Maybe I can take the baby steps. So it's important that you don't do that assumption and write people off. You can't also assume that your customers are going to stay with you forever, okay? You need to put effort and time in. You need to make them feel appreciated, to thank them, to show them that you are grateful that they're in your community, because people are fickle. People are fickle. They will not stay where they are not made to feel welcome. So you might have customers that order from you that are some great orders, okay? Then they might not order from you for like 6 months, but if you never reach out to them and you don't make them still feel like they're valid, they might think, oh, do you know what? She was all over me when I placed those really big orders and I've not heard a thing from her since, so I just think she's in it. She just wants my money. She's not really interested in me whatsoever, so I'm going to go and find somebody else that takes the time to get to know me, that wants to have a little chat when I pick up the orders. So just remember, it's important to not assume. So don't let the arrogant monkey sit on your shoulder, making you feel like you're God's given gift, okay, because you're not. And don't let the self-doubt sit on your shoulder. That will destroy your inner confidence, your self-esteem. You want to find that sweet spot where it's okay to have a little bit of doubt. It's okay to be a bit fearful. It's okay to be a bit nervous. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, okay? And it's also, you want that little sweet spot where it's okay to think, do you know what? I'm actually doing better than I thought. I've actually done well today and I'm going to praise myself. So it's that sweet spot where you're kind to yourself. And then when you start to recognize you're kind to yourself, you will have that empathy, that understanding with your customers. And you will then go, well, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to just wipe her off and, you know, poo-poo that idea or never talk to her about that, because I don't know what she's going through. This might be the perfect product for her. This might be the perfect opportunity for her. This might be the whatever for her. But if I don't share it, I'm not doing my job. And if I don't do my job and I don't share it, she could be potentially missing out on something she's going to love and enjoy, or that she could potentially earn income from, gain confidence from, gain friends from, be able to go on holidays, be able to earn incentives. Why should I not share that information? Why should I not give her every opportunity that's in front of me? Why should she not have that opportunity? So it's really important that next time you go to assume anything about anyone, ask yourself this question. Do I know that as a fact? Is it a whole and complete truth? Or is it just my ego talking? Ask the questions, share the knowledge, do the work, make the effort and be open-minded, and work with that understanding ego. Really try to find your understanding ego, because once you've grasped that, you won't ever have the intense mind monkeys, the arrogant and the self-doubt mind monkeys winding you up and destroying your inner peace, because you'll be in this really nice sweet spot and everything becomes easier when you're in that position. So thank you very much for watching. If you've got any questions, pop them below, and I will see you next week for next week's training. Take care.